My parents said there was no room for me at Christmas until they saw me pull up at their charity fundraiser in a $170,000 Maserati they didn't even know I owned. I'm 29 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the overlooked child in my own family. My parents, Douglas and Helena Quinn, cared more about appearances than love. Everything in our house was about perfection: perfect home, perfect image, perfect son. And then there was me, the extra piece that never quite fit their picture. My older brother Grant was the star. They poured everything into him: attention, money, endless praise. If he brought home a small trophy from some random baseball game, the whole house exploded into celebration. Meanwhile, when I won an actual science competition, my mom barely looked up from her phone and said, "That's nice, Marley." That was my childhood, always present, never seen. So when Christmas came around this year, I tried again. Maybe foolishly, maybe out of habit. I thought, maybe this year would be different. Maybe they would finally want me there. But when I called, my mother sighed like my voice alone exhausted her. "Marley, the house is full this Christmas. We just don't have room for you." She didn't even try to make it sound believable. In the background, I heard laughter, voices I didn't recognize. Guests. Strangers. People who meant nothing to them. Yet they all had a place. I was the only one who didn't. My dad added, in his usual cold tone, "We'll catch up another time." Another time that would never come. When the call ended, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the silent phone in my hand. For years, I'd tried to convince myself that I mattered to them, even a little. But hearing those words, "no room for you," broke something I didn't even realize was still holding on. I didn't cry, though. Not this time. Instead, I felt something inside me settle, like a final puzzle piece clicking into place. I finally accepted the truth. They never wanted me. Not at Christmas, not as a kid, not ever. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to try to fit into a family that had already decided I didn't belong. I was going to build my own life, one that didn't revolve around winning their approval. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I was done chasing people who didn't care if I showed up or disappeared. Something in me hardened in a quiet, steady way. I knew this was the beginning of my freedom. What I didn't know then was that life was already preparing something powerful for me. Something that would pull back the curtain on everything they had ever ignored about me. And one day soon, my success would become a silent, elegant revenge they would never forget. When I look back at my childhood, the first thing I remember is how invisible I felt in my own home. It was like I lived in the same house as my family, but I wasn't really part of it. I was there, but no one truly saw me. Most days, I felt like background noise. Easy to ignore, easy to blame, easy to forget. Growing up, I learned quickly that almost anything could be pinned on me. If something went missing, it was my fault. If Grant messed up, somehow I was the one who should have been watching him. My parents didn't even ask questions. They just looked at me with disappointed eyes, the kind of eyes that said I was always the problem, even when I wasn't. I was used to it long before I understood how wrong it was. Meanwhile, Grant was treated like the center of their world. They poured everything into him: time, money, attention, praise. No matter what he did, they acted like he was destined for greatness. I remember watching them celebrate his smallest achievements like they were world records. They cheered, clapped, hugged him, and filled the house with so much excitement that it almost felt unreal. My achievements, on the other hand, barely got a second glance. The clearest moment was when I entered the school science fair. I worked for weeks on a project about solar energy. I stayed up late researching, building, testing, making sure everything was perfect. I was so proud when I won second place. Not first, but still something big for me. I came home holding that project like it was a treasure, my heart racing with hope that maybe, just maybe, this time they would see me. But that same day, Grant had come home with a small baseball trophy. It wasn't for anything special. His team didn't even win. It was one of those participation awards they give to everyone. Still, my parents threw him a party. They invited neighbors, made snacks, blasted music, and kept telling everyone how talented Grant was. My science project sat on the kitchen counter untouched. At one point, someone even placed a tray of cookies on top of it. No one asked me about it. No one even noticed it was mine. I stood there in the middle of the noise, holding my little silver ribbon, feeling it slip from my fingers. I didn't cry. I just quietly put the ribbon in my pocket and tried to smile so no one would know how much it hurt. That moment was when something changed inside me. I didn't have the words for it then, but it was the beginning of a long, quiet ache. The feeling that no matter how hard I tried, I would never matter the way Grant did. Those early years planted seeds I didn't understand until much later. Seeds of loneliness, seeds of resentment, and the deep, painful belief that I would always be second place in my own family. When I got older, I thought things might finally change. I thought maybe my parents would see how hard I was trying to build a better future. I worked 2 jobs while studying, sometimes coming home so tired I could barely stand. But I kept going. I earned a scholarship through pure effort, something no one in my family ever helped me with. That scholarship became my way out and eventually led me to becoming an automotive engineer. For the first time in my life, I felt proud of myself. Even then, I never expected praise from my parents. I had learned not to, but I still hoped they would at least treat me fairly when I needed help. After a painful breakup, I had nowhere to go. My apartment lease was ending, and I needed just a little time, just a few weeks, to get back on my feet. So I did something I rarely did. I called my parents. I explained everything, thinking maybe they would show a little kindness. Instead, my mom sounded annoyed, as if I was bothering her. "Marley, you're always dealing with something," she said. "You're unstable. We don't want extra drama in the house." Unstable. Drama. Those words hit harder than the breakup itself. My dad didn't even bother to ask if I was okay. He simply said it wasn't a good time and told me to handle things like an adult. Then, almost in the same week, Grant got arrested again for his 3rd DUI. And suddenly my parents had all the time, money, and energy in the world. They hired the best lawyer in the city, paid for special treatment programs, and even brought in a PR person to make sure it didn't hurt the family name. I remember hearing my father say, "We need to protect Grant. One mistake shouldn't ruin his life." One mistake. It was his 3rd. Yet they treated him like a victim, someone who deserved support and understanding. Meanwhile, I was labeled dramatic for needing a place to sleep. That was the moment something inside me finally snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. I saw the truth as plainly as daylight. No matter what I achieved, no matter how responsible I was, they would never see me the way they saw Grant. I would always be the extra weight they didn't want to carry. So I made a quiet promise to myself. I would never ask them for anything again. Not help, not attention, not love. I would build my life without them, and whatever I became, I would become on my own. After the way my parents treated me, leaving felt like the only right choice. So I packed my few things, saved every dollar I could, and moved across the country. I didn't know anyone there, but I liked the idea of starting somewhere completely fresh. No family judgment, no old expectations, no one comparing me to Grant. Just me, my work, and a chance to build a life that belonged to me alone. I found a small room to rent and took the first job I could get at a performance vehicle company. It wasn't glamorous at the beginning. I cleaned equipment, organized tools, ran small tests, and learned everything I could by watching the senior engineers. Most people didn't pay attention to me, but one person did, Rhett Callahan. Rhett was older, rough around the edges, and spoke like every word cost him something. He wasn't warm, but he wasn't cruel either. He had this steady, no-nonsense way of working that I respected. At first, he barely talked to me, but he noticed how hard I tried. He saw me volunteering for extra shifts, studying technical manuals during lunch, and asking the kind of questions only someone who wanted to grow would ask. One day he surprised me by tossing a set of keys onto my desk and saying, "You're coming to the test track. Time you learn something real." That was the start of everything. Under Rhett's guidance, I learned how engines truly worked, how power, speed, and sound all came together. He pushed me, corrected me, and challenged me in ways no one in my life ever had. Sometimes he was blunt to the point of harsh, but he never made me feel small. He made me better. Slowly, I climbed the ranks. First, junior technician, then assistant engineer, then lead on small projects. People at the company began to notice my ideas, especially the ones Rhett encouraged me to share. Eventually, I developed a concept for my own custom performance model. I poured everything I had into it. My long nights, my focus, my pride, all the pieces of myself I once wished someone would see. When the design was finally approved, I felt something I had never felt before. I mattered. My work mattered. I had built something valuable. The company loved the model so much they gave me a massive paycheck and a huge bonus commission. When I saw the final number, I had to sit down. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was succeeding. With that money, I did something for myself. Something I had dreamed of since I was a teenager. I bought a Maserati Quattroporte. Not just any car, my dream car. The one I used to stare at in magazines, knowing no one would ever buy it for me. Now I had bought it myself. Sitting behind that wheel for the first time, I felt powerful in a quiet, peaceful way. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't trying to prove anything to my parents. This was my victory, earned, not gifted. My life finally felt like it belonged to me. Even after everything that happened in the past, there was still a small part of me that hoped my parents might want me back in their lives. I don't know why. Maybe it was habit, or maybe it was that tiny piece of hope I had never fully killed. So when Christmas came around, I decided to reach out. I told myself it didn't hurt to try. Maybe they had changed. Maybe they would finally want me there. Not for what I could offer, but simply because I was their daughter. I called a week before Christmas. My mom picked up, and the moment I heard her voice, I felt that old nervous feeling in my chest, the one I used to get every time I tried to talk to her. I told her I was planning to be in town for the holidays and asked if I could come home for Christmas dinner. There was a long pause, the kind that tells you everything before the words even come. Then she said in a flat voice, "Oh, Marley, we didn't plan for you this year." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I tried to keep my voice steady and asked what she meant. She sighed like the conversation was too much work. "We already have too many guests," she said. "The house is full." Before I could respond, I heard laughter and voices behind her. Lots of them. People talking loudly, clinking glasses, chatting like they belonged there. The voices weren't familiar. These weren't relatives or close friends I grew up with. These were strangers, people they barely knew, but apparently, they all had a place in my parents' home. Everyone except me. I didn't know what to say. My mom's tone grew sharper, like I was inconveniencing her just by asking. "Marley, you always make things difficult," she said. "It's better if you skip this year." Those words felt like a slap. Difficult. As if wanting to spend Christmas with my own family made me a problem. As if I was asking for too much. My dad never even came to the phone. He didn't say hello or ask how I was doing. I guess he didn't feel the need to. In their minds, I was someone they could push aside without guilt. I swallowed the hurt and forced myself to stay calm. I told her I understood, even though I didn't. After the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time, letting the truth settle in my chest. The truth that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I grew, no matter how far I came in life, they would always treat me like an outsider. I spent Christmas alone in my small apartment. No decorations, no gifts, no warm family dinner. Just me and the quiet. But something shifted inside me that night. Something solid and unbreakable. I finally accepted that I didn't have a place in their world. And I promised myself I would never let them hurt me like that again. A few weeks after Christmas passed, life slowly settled back into its normal rhythm. I kept myself busy with work, trying not to think about the holiday I spent alone. I told myself it didn't matter anymore, that I was done caring. But sometimes when the evenings got too quiet, I felt that same sting in my chest. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was more like a reminder that I didn't belong to the family I was born into. Then one afternoon, I opened my mailbox and found a fancy envelope with gold lettering. At first, I thought it was some kind of advertising mail. But when I opened it, my stomach tightened. It was an invitation. A formal one, embossed and heavy, like it came from someone important. It was my parents' annual charity fundraiser. I stared at it for a long time, wondering why they would suddenly send me this. But when I looked closely, I saw something that made everything clear. The envelope wasn't addressed to me at all. My name wasn't anywhere on it. It must have been part of a large batch of invitations, and one had been delivered to my address by mistake. They hadn't invited me. Not even by accident. That small detail said everything. My parents had room for strangers, business partners, wealthy guests, and anyone who could help their reputation. But not for me. Not for Christmas. Not for anything real. I looked up the event online out of curiosity. It was bigger than I expected. A high-profile charity night connected to my dad's company, full of important people, reporters, donors, and executives. The kind of event where appearances mattered more than actual kindness. And that's when something clicked inside me. If my parents knew I had built a good life, if they knew I owned a Maserati, had a respected job, or designed a performance model, they would have been the first to brag. They would have introduced me around, pretending they always supported me. They would have used my success as their decoration. They didn't want me as a daughter. They wanted me as a trophy they could show off. That realization didn't hurt the way Christmas had. It felt different, clear, sharp, like pulling a thorn out after years of letting it stay buried. I finally understood how little space I held in their hearts, yet how valuable I would suddenly become if it made them look good. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to attend to gain their approval, or to fix anything, or to pretend I still needed them. I didn't. I was going to show up for myself. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, confidently, and on my own terms. This time, I wouldn't be the girl they ignored. I would be the woman they never imagined I could become, and the woman they no longer had any claim over. The night of the fundraiser, I drove up to the event with a steady calm in my chest. Not excitement, not fear, just calm. The Maserati's engine purred smoothly as I pulled into the long driveway lined with bright lights and luxury cars. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the kid pushed aside or the daughter who never fit in. I felt sure of who I was. When I reached the front of the venue, a group of valet staff turned their heads at the sound of my car. One of them let out a low whistle. Another stepped forward quickly, almost eagerly, as if he wanted the honor of parking it. "Ma'am, right this way," he said with a polite smile, opening my door like I was someone important. They treated me with the kind of respect I never got from my own family. I handed over the keys, and the valet said, "We'll put it in the VIP section." His voice held genuine admiration, the kind I wasn't used to. I nodded and adjusted my dress, feeling more grounded than ever. Before I even walked inside, I noticed my mother and father standing near the entrance, greeting guests and shaking hands. They didn't see me, not yet. But they saw the car. Their eyes latched onto it immediately, and I watched my father lean closer to my mother, as if trying to figure out who the owner might be. I could almost hear their thoughts. Who arrived in that? A donor? A business partner? My mother straightened herself, her face glowing with that fake charming smile she saved for people she wanted to impress. They both kept watching the valet team handle my car, still not realizing it was mine. Then I stepped out. It took a few seconds for their eyes to leave the car and land on me, but when they did, all the color drained from their faces. My mother's hand froze mid-wave. My father blinked twice, almost like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Their expressions twisted, shock first, then confusion, then something that almost looked like fear. It was the first time in my life I had ever seen them truly speechless. I walked toward them slowly, not rushing or trying to grab attention. I didn't need to. Every movement felt calm, deliberate, steady. The silence between us stretched as I reached them, and suddenly they snapped out of it. My mother rushed toward me with a smile so wide it looked painful. "Marley, oh my goodness, you're here," she said in a sugary voice she never used with me before. She reached for my arm as if we were close. My father stepped in too, forcing a smile. "Sweetheart, why didn't you tell us you were coming? Come in, come in. We have people we want you to meet." The shift was so fast it almost made me laugh. Hours before, I was the daughter they never had room for. Now, standing beside a luxury car they didn't know I could own, they suddenly wanted to parade me around. But I didn't move. I just looked at them, calm and steady, letting their fake affection hang in the air. For once, I wasn't the one seeking approval. They were. I stayed calm as my parents tried to pull me into the room, smiling at everyone around us as if I were just another accessory for their fundraiser. I nodded politely to the people they introduced me to, shaking hands and exchanging brief greetings, but I kept my distance. I wasn't there to be a prop or to make them look good. That part of me, the girl who needed their approval, was long gone. As I walked past a group of their friends and business associates, I overheard my parents talking quietly, but loud enough for me to catch. "Look at her car. Can you believe she drives that now?" "Of course, we helped her get it," my mother said with a proud laugh, her eyes scanning the guests to make sure they were impressed. I stopped for a moment, feeling a wave of disbelief mixed with quiet satisfaction. They were claiming credit for something they had nothing to do with. My Maserati, my success, it was all mine, built from my hard work and long nights, not a single cent from them. I straightened up, took a breath, and spoke clearly, so everyone nearby could hear. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady, "I earned this car myself. My career, my work, my life. I built it without any help from my parents." A hush fell over the small group of donors and guests. Whispers started immediately. People glanced at my parents, their eyes questioning, their smiles faltering. For the first time that night, the air shifted, and it wasn't in my parents' favor. I felt a quiet thrill, knowing that I was finally standing on my own, openly and confidently. My father's face turned red, and he stepped forward, grabbing my arm. "Marley, not here. We can talk about this privately," he said, his voice sharp, almost panicked. I shook my head slowly, holding his gaze. "No, Dad. This is exactly the place. I'm not hiding anymore. I won't be controlled or used to make anyone look good. I worked for everything I have, and I'm proud of it." He let go, frustrated, and muttered something under his breath, but I didn't look back. I turned slightly toward the crowd and gave a small, polite nod, letting them see that I was composed, confident, and entirely in charge of my own story. Around me, the whispers grew louder, people exchanging quiet words about the tension and the revelation. I could feel eyes on my parents, noticing the cracks in the perfect image they always tried to show the world. I didn't need to say more. The message was clear. I was no longer invisible. I had finally claimed my space, and nothing they said or did could change that. For the first time in my life, I was fully seen, not as their daughter, not as a mistake, but as someone who had earned her own place and refused to let anyone take it away. I took a deep breath and faced my parents, letting my eyes meet theirs. The small group of people around us had started noticing the tension, sensing something important was about to happen. I didn't step back. I wasn't nervous. For the first time, I felt steady, strong, and ready to speak my truth. "I've spent my whole life feeling invisible to you," I began, my voice calm but firm. "I was always the unwanted child, the one who was ignored, overlooked, and blamed for things I didn't do. You gave every opportunity, every favor, every ounce of love to grant, while I learned early that I would never matter to you." I could see my father shift uncomfortably, and my mother's hand tightened around her wine glass. But I continued. "Do you remember this past Christmas? The one you told me I couldn't come because the house was full?" I overheard the voices of people I didn't even know in the background. I wasn't welcome, yet strangers were. That's what it has always been like with you. I've worked, I've struggled, and I've achieved, but nothing I ever did made a difference in your eyes. I let my words sink in. The room was quiet now, all eyes on us. I didn't need to raise my voice. The weight of the truth made it loud enough. "You've spent my life manipulating me, making me feel guilty, like I owed you my time, my love, or my obedience. I've tried, I've hoped, I've waited for a sign that you cared, but there never was one. Your favoritism was always clear. Your expectations were designed to control me, not to help me grow. I've realized something important tonight. I don't need your approval. I never did." My father's face turned red as he opened his mouth to respond, but the words stumbled out awkwardly. "Marley, that's not fair." "My words are fair," I interrupted gently, shaking my head. "And they're true." My mother's expression hardened. "You're exaggerating." "That's not how it was," she said sharply, her denial almost mechanical. I looked at them, my voice steady, my eyes clear. "You didn't have room for me then. Don't make room for me now." I didn't wait for a response. I turned calmly and walked toward the exit. My hand rested lightly on the Maserati keys in my pocket, a quiet reminder of everything I had achieved on my own. The small crowd watched silently, sensing the finality in my actions. I didn't run. I didn't slam doors or shout. I left with composure, walking out with a calm confidence that I had never felt before. That moment wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about claiming my life, my dignity, and my freedom. For the first time, I truly understood that leaving them behind wasn't a loss. It was a beginning. After leaving the fundraiser, I expected to feel relief mixed with some sadness, maybe even anger. But instead, I felt something lighter, like a weight I didn't know I was carrying had finally lifted. The years of being overlooked, dismissed, and hurt didn't vanish, but for the first time, I didn't feel trapped by them anymore. I felt free. I walked to my Maserati, opened the door, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine roared softly under my touch, and I felt a thrill run through me. I didn't drive with any specific destination in mind. I just let the car move, the city lights blurring past, the wind brushing against the windows. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I didn't need validation from my parents, their friends, or even the people at the fundraiser. I was doing this for me, for the first time fully and completely for me. A few days later, I met with Red at the office. He had that same serious, no-nonsense look he always did, but there was a hint of pride in his eyes. "Marley," he said, "your design is being fast-tracked. They're planning a national reveal. You're going to be in the spotlight more than anyone else in the company. Big things are coming. I felt a rush of excitement, but it wasn't the kind that depended on anyone else's approval. This was my work, my effort, my brilliance being recognized. And I had earned it all on my own. The car, the fundraiser, the shocked faces of my parents. It had been satisfying, yes, but the real victory was something deeper. For the first time, I understood what real revenge meant. Not making someone else feel small, not embarrassing them, not showing them wealth they never expected. Real revenge was living a life they could never touch or claim. Every success I achieved, every opportunity one earned, every moment of peace I felt on my own terms, that was my quiet, unshakable triumph. I didn't need to text them, call them, or make sure they noticed. I didn't need applause, recognition, or their fake smiles. I just needed to live fully, unapologetically, without ever giving them a chance to control me again. That night, I drove for hours, the city lights stretching out endlessly in front of me. I felt proud, not in a boastful way, but in the quiet satisfaction of someone who had finally claimed her life. I thought about the years of hurt, the lonely nights, the silent tears, and I realized that all of it had led me here. I was stronger, smarter, and more capable than I had ever imagined. The Maserati, the promotion, the recognition, they were all symbols of something bigger, freedom. I had finally built a life that no one could take from me, a life that belonged only to me. And that, I realized, was the most powerful revenge of all.